Welcome to Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, and we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources in health and finance. But more importantly, this podcast is all about athletes transitioning out of sport. It's such a major issue today between financial literacy, mental health, and we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their journey and transition out of sport, ultimately into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. And the whole idea is to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. So excited today to have with us Adam Constantine. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, Rob. This is great.
It's my pleasure. So Adam, we'll get into some of the different things. He was a college basketball player at Elon. We talked about that offline. Beautiful school, by the way. And
yes,
then he went on. He went on to play professionally overseas, and then ultimately he got into social media and kind of went through some different companies, getting his feet wet even at Elon. But ultimately, he is now the founder of Ace Creatives. And what's the byline you had, like the largest social media guy or something like that?
Yeah, world's tallest social media manager. That was my claim to fame for a while. So if there's somebody out there 6'9" or higher that does it, we can fight for it. But yes, currently that's what I know.
There you go. All right. So Adam's the tallest one out there in the social media world. So talk about playing sports growing up. How did that shape you leading up into college?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sports has always been something where, and I've really only realized this as I started my own company and I've worked with people either who aren't in sports or who haven't had that background, ability for it to give you, like, demand both structure and excellence from you while not promising victory is something that really preps you for the future. You have to be earlier on time to your practices. You have to practice as hard as you can. It's never going to be enough. You always have to do more. You're told you have to do this if you want to be successful. And then you get to the game and you still may not be successful. And all that means is you have to go harder the next time. So I think there is one of the things that sports really teaches is learning from losses. A lot of times there's an expectation to win, even if you're playing like single player mode in video games. They're built for you to win. Like, yes, you can lose, you can mess this up, but you always get to try again. You always get to redo it. You always get to do that. In sports, you don't get that. If you miss a shot, that is a shot that is missed forever. If you lose a game, I still remember rec league. I was playing soccer, rec league soccer, and we were the second best team. I think there was 4 teams, but we were the second best team. And I remember we were playing, we had red jerseys. We were playing the black jersey team. I remember they had a kid on their team named Lucas. He was really good, but I remember that whole day, like, we're going to beat them. Today is the day. And we lost. And I still remember that. I mean, I'm like 5, 6, 7, like something that early. But I remember this feeling of like, we prepped for this. We're ready for this. And we get to the game and we lose. And I still played after that, right? Like, I still went to the next game. So that's really what sports really instilled in me. What sports, I think, teaches a lot of people is that structure, the pursuit of excellence, and the understanding that more often than not, you will fail at getting that and you still have to try again.
Absolutely, man. What is it? It's the old baseball analogy, right? You can be successful 3 out of 10 times and be in the Hall of Fame, or
Yes.
you can fail 7 out of 10 times, however you want to look at it. So you're right. What did you dream about being a professional athlete when you were young? And if so, was it in basketball?
Yeah, I remember fairly early on, I wanted to play in the NBA, right? Like, that was my goal, was to eventually play in the NBA, but basketball was what I loved. Now, when I grew up, I played a multitude of sports, right? I did soccer, I did baseball for a little bit, I swam, so did a lot. And then once we got to by the time I was in high school, I did volleyballs when I was growing up. And by the time I got to high school, it was basketball and soccer. I hit a growth spurt. I got up to 6'4". I played soccer my 9th grade year. Then my JV basketball coach was like, "What are you doing?" He was like,
Yeah, you're too tall, dude. Come on.
Right, exactly. This is before Peter Crouch could have been my role model. But he was like, what are we doing here? Like, you're 6'4", you're 15 years old. Like, come on over here. So I was like, okay, so I fully locked into basketball from then on, with the goal to make the college. And then if I was fortunate enough to be a pro.
Yeah, no, I think every kid that plays sports probably dreams of something. I always talk about I want to be a Major League Baseball player.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the talent wasn't there, so I do podcasts.
Hey, look, I say the same thing. Like, I did not make it to the NBA, right? So, like, based on my goals that I set, that failed. But it doesn't mean that what I did accomplish in the pursuit of that were not also successes.
Absolutely, and it definitely shaped you, as we talked about. So let's go to college, and I talk about transition out of sport, and you were in college a little while back, me a lot longer back. But was there any kind of education at the time of athletes transitioning out of sport once you were done?
Yeah, so not in an official capacity. It very much was from my parents. I grew up with my mother and father that took me to every game, took me to every practice. The first home game that my parents missed was when I was in Bulgaria playing as a pro. So like they instilled, hey, even if you played until 35, which is when I wanted to play until, which my knees laughed at that. But like even if you play until 35, that's still a minimum 30 more working years if you're retiring at 65, which is the regular age. You have to be able to do something. So I had that instilled, which I'm fortunate about because it wasn't there in an official capacity of how to have athletes, former athletes, transition into the working world, or even know how valuable the skill set of an athlete is to employers and how to use those skills, transfer those skills into the corporate world. Because I do say being an athlete is a transferable skill in the corporate world. Having been an athlete is a transferable skill. It's just knowing what skills translate how that will dictate the amount of success that you can ascertain.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you probably I don't know if you've listened to some or watched some of the podcasts, but yeah, we talk about that all the time. I mean, the athlete skill set, and we'll talk more about it later of just how that translates. In fact, even today I did a post. We had a cross country runner, like I was a runner in high school and college. I got hurt, but just talked about this the perseverance, the persistence, leadership, everything that just defines an athlete and how that transfers into a career in the future or to entrepreneurship, business leadership, like we're talking about. We're also talking about going to athletic departments and helping to develop additional curriculum. We've got resource partners that we work with in the various spaces. I think it's so important, not only to the current athletes but to the alumni athletes as well. So, folks like yourself that were fortunate enough to play professionally, and all of a sudden you're done. It would be nice to know that you might be able to tap back into your alma mater and get some type of education on that whole transition because I think it's just so important.
Yeah, and I think a lot of schools are realizing that. And, we're now in the age of NIL. So there are, like more of this understanding of it. But yeah, having a place to where athletes can know, all right, when this, because I think that's the other thing too. Sports like Kobe got a year, rest his soul, to say, I'm retired and be celebrated, right? Like lots of athletes sometimes you're just done. Like I was in preseason in Finland. I hurt my knee for the second major time and I was done. No fanfare, no end of season thank you fans, no time to prep or kind of like start to, okay, well, what am I going to do? It was, oh gosh, this plan that I had in front of me for years and years more is now gone. I don't know where to go. I was fortunate because I built up a network, but to have a place where there is a network built up, so it's okay, yes, this happened. Here is how I can move forward is something hugely beneficial to a lot of athletes, even if they're just playing in college and eventually ending out.
Right, right, yeah, and you hit me on a good segue there because and I want to talk a little about networking, connecting, and especially the importance while you're still playing. Because when you're relevant, we've had a lot of conversations with people talking to agents that sometimes the athletes kind of fail to do that just because they're so zoned in the sport, understandably. But give me your thoughts on that.
Networking is the way to success in the society that we have built in. People will truly work with you because they like you. Like that, like when people are like, well, what's the key to getting clients? Know your stuff and be likable. So like knowing, making sure that you have those connections, and it doesn't also have to be a connection that is going to bear fruit now. You can just be a generic connector, somebody that is a junior account manager at this place that has no pull in 3 years could be the VP of marketing somewhere else, right? So like you never know who you're going to know. So it's always about reaching out, and networking is truly introducing yourself, talking to them, adding value of some kind. It can be humor. That's a big thing that I use. Adding value to them and then keeping in touch. That could be once a year if needed, right? Like connect with them on LinkedIn, send them a message every now and then. Just like that's all networking is, right? Sometimes people think networking is like door to door or you got to go to all these happy hours. Nope. But networking is the key to success. My company is built off of networking, both employees, in the sense that almost everybody at my company is connected to somebody else because of word of mouth or they were able to vouch, and client base. Like I usually have a touch point of someone who knows someone who put me in contact with X. And that is like networking is purely the name of the game when it comes to building your own business, to climbing the corporate ladder, to getting a foot in the door to start.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, we talk about that all the time, and even like looking back too, as even back to your high school times, of you've got your teammates, and look at what their parents might do, and keep in touch. Relationships are everything. I mean, one of the guys, I keep bringing this up because it really resonated. He was talking about how he's a, CEO of a company, and he said that his son plays college lacrosse, and that his son gets it, but like now his friends are like now reaching out to the father, one who's on the podcast, and just talking about potential internships. So always be open out there to other people want to help, and like Adam's saying, just build those relationships. It's so critical. And even to the point that, I always like to bring this story up of just, you don't know, just because you feel like you brought up the whole thing of being like a junior account rep and then going to VP of marketing, you never know where people are going to be. And then, how can you help that person that might be way above you? Maybe it's helping their kids. You just never know, but it's just building relationships.
Yep, absolutely. It could be where they help you. It could be where you're helping them. This is something that could pay off 1 year, 3 years, 10 years, or may not, right? Like not every network has to bear fruit. Networking, if you network in the same way that we talked about with baseball, right? 3 out of 10 gets you in the Hall of Fame. 2 out of 10 gets you a prosperous career in whichever way you choose when it comes to that.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about alumni engagement. Obviously, Alumni Direct, that's important to us, of just bringing back alumni. When you were there, was Elon bringing back any athletes, and not necessarily specific to basketball, but in general, and not for like just the homecoming, but more so to engage with the other athletes there?
Yeah, not in the corporate sense. Now, like one of the things with athletics is it's your team and cohort are heavily tied to the coach that you have. Like Elon wasn't the powerhouse of basketball success. So sometimes there were quite a few coaching changes. So a lot of times that doesn't transfer, right? If I'm a new coach, I don't really know who the alumni are before or to bring them in. I know a larger organization. So my brother was a strength coach at Alabama, the Crimson Tide, for 5 years, and they would bring in people. But like that's more, obviously celebrity focused and like big names to give them those pump up talks. So that corporate piece isn't always there. I think one, because coaches are like, look, I got games to win, like this is what I'm
Yeah.
doing now.
No, you're right.
But
You're right.
two,
Yeah.
like getting an 18 to 20-year-old, 1-year-old to capture that attention is going to be tough. But I do think once they are in front of that, again, it may not be relevant to them in those years, but 2 years later when they graduate, they may be willing to reach out to that person or to have that conversation. And I've had some athletes that I haven't even spoken to on the Elon basketball team that have reached out for advice or to look for jobs, or to have that, because we had built relationships.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, you've got that affinity relationship, as an athlete as well as an alumni. This is something that's been kind of interesting lately. We've been talking about from your perspective when we're talking different sports, talking talking to each other, basketball, football, baseball, especially when you get to the professional level. Like do you see a lot of that, or does it seem more siloed by the sport as far as interacting with each other?
It really is going to depend on the setup, but it's mostly siloed by sport, just because like your schedules are so unique. Sometimes people don't even have friends outside of the sport that they have, right? Because like when your friends have classes, well, you had a workout lifting before that, and then after your class, well, you have 90 minutes, and then you have practice after that. Then you're exhausted when everybody else wants to go do something or go out somewhere, so you don't have that schedule. They're waking up at 2, and you had from 8 a.m. to 1:30, but now you got to go to the game. So a lot of times it can be siloed. But I do know like lots of people that have had, like cross sport relationships and friendships and acquaintanceships that happen out there. So it definitely depends on your school's makeup and setup, especially depending on, a lot of it can be geographical too in college, right? Like where is everybody, and is that something where the ease of a relationship building can happen?
Is there any kind of alumni engagement from your basketball days as a professional? Like any kind of reaching out? Is there alumni associations for like, some of the leagues that you're in?
Yeah, not that I am aware of, but I also may not know too much. Obviously, there is like the Phoenix Club, right? So there's Elon University, there's the Phoenix Club, which is around there. I don't know how much of it is around corporate or in bringing people back to talk through it. So that I'm not sure about, but off the top of my head, like for example, I would happily go back to Elon and talk to the basketball team, even though I don't know any of those players per se. Just talk to them about, hey, here's my journey. Here's life after basketball. Here's what you should look for, right? Like, so I do think that there is a need and a definite possibility on how that can make sense through that journey.
Yeah, I think more schools need to look at. I mean, and some do, but like I said, a lot of times it seems like they're coming back for like homecomings and things like that. But I think there's, it's got to be a two-way street. But I think athletes do want to come back and will come back, to your point, and just to work with the athletes. And I've been on calls and talk about this a lot too. But with my own school, of being on with a former Hall of Fame player, football player that played 10 years in the NFL, and me talking to the athletic department, and them just saying that it's a challenge, to develop a mentoring program, but you have people that are willing to do it, and they just, they need to tap into that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding the person that's going to be accountable for that, right? Like
Yeah,
whose job is it going to
sure.
be to foster that? I think it'll be huge.
Right. And again, yeah, a lot of these athletic departments I get it too are like understaffed and stuff like that. So I can see that, being some kind of challenges. So I always talk about my fun questions. So if you listened or watched any other podcast, you'll know what they are. So first question is, what advice would you give to freshman Adam if you went back in time? 10 words or less.
You have time, not as much as you think, though.
There you go. Look at that. He did it. Hey, that's gonna make that's great video content, Adam. That's gonna go viral. Adam got the 10 words on his 10 fingers. I love it.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I was
awesome.
saying. Like, you have time, not as much
Yeah.
as you think, though, which really translates to take advantage of every day you've given, but don't rush or be frustrated with the fact that you haven't seen the fruits of your labor yet. Like I have an orange tree in my backyard. It does not provide oranges every day. Like there's a time and when it will. All the prep work you're doing is for when it is time to bear.
Yeah. Okay. And then fast forward to senior Adam.
10 words still?
Yeah. Let's try to do 10. If not, it's okay. I mean, some
Yes,
people
yeah,
do about
no, no,
100
no.
words.
Right, no, no. I like this challenge. You have your whole life ahead of you. Be great. I think a lot of times I wanted to make it a point that my playing days were never going to be like the golden years. Like, oh, those were the days. No, that was a specific time in my life. I loved that time. I do miss that time. But the best days that I have, maybe that's what it is. Have you ever had someone do a do-over? The best days of your life are still ahead of you. I think that's what I would say to senior Adam. Because senior Adam end of senior year, yeah, I wanted to play pro, but I was heartbroken, right? Like I didn't
Yeah.
know what was happening. But like the best days of your life are still ahead of you in the career that you build, in the way that you build, in the networking, and you know, like if you haven't met them in college, you know, meeting your partner or after school. This is for non BYU students. Once you meet somebody, like building a family, you know, like those are the best things, right? So live as if your college years are not going to be the golden years of your life. I think I
Yeah.
basically gave
No,
you three sets of 10 words there for different
you
ones.
did. All
But
right. Again, this is going viral on social media. This is great. All right. So let's talk about you. I guess went through two transitions because one was going from college to being a professional athlete. So let's talk about that first.
yeah, college becomes a job, and I don't know if NIL is changing this because NIL didn't exist when I was there, right? Once there's a financial value attached to what you're doing, it does change a bit of it. Some of the joy that you have is tested. It's not that it goes away, but it's tested. And it's just different expectations. As a college kid, you kind of have like the knuckleheads that are out there that you have to like babysit. Like as a pro, you don't show up, fine. Like you don't show up again, fine. You don't show up again, suspended without pay. You know, like there is a level. The other part is, I mean, I used to love it. I was like, man, I really am lifting weights, getting 2 workouts in a day, and then playing video games. Like there is this like sense of freedom in there, but you then have to be structured. You can be as motivated or unmotivated as you want, and no one's gonna say anything, especially in the off season, right? Like you are your own driver as opposed to your coaches scheduling stuff in the off season and making sure that you're here and checking that you're in class and doing that. As a pro, nope. Especially if you're a free agent, right? Which if you're going overseas, you're probably just signing 1 year contracts. And so like at the end of that contract, bye. The new team hasn't signed you yet. No one's telling you what to do. You can sit there for 3 months, not touch a basketball, not touch a weight, not do anything, or you can self motivate. So I think the biggest transition, and you know, it's kind of like a popular phrase going around, so I won't act like I'm the one that came up with it, is motivated athletes in college have to adapt to a disciplined mindset as a pro. Motivation will only take you so far. You're in a cramped apartment in another country where your friends and family aren't awake yet. You had a bad game. The people over there don't like you. They're saying that you're not worth the money, and you have to get up and go to practice again. Or you have to get up and go get more shots in on your own. And maybe you don't have a rebounder. Maybe you have to do that by yourself. Maybe you have to unlock the gym. Maybe you have to heat the gym because it's cold in there. There's a lot of things that start to happen to where like the joy of basketball is like, man, do I really like, is this what I want? Also, people don't make a lot of money. There are people that make huge contracts, of course. But then there are people that make something that like is akin to minimum wage, right? Like if you're working now, you're getting to play basketball, you're getting to play a sport. So I never shame anybody that didn't make a lot of money, but the money isn't enough. The fame of it isn't enough. It really tests your love of the game when you're over there and how that feels and flows.
And how about once it was over? So basically now, you're transitioning to like real life, as people will call it. How was that? I mean, you played basketball your whole life. Now you're kind of going into the world, going into social media, and all that. How was that transition for you?
Yeah, it was pretty mentally jarring. The good thing is that because what we talked about before, I could see the writing on the wall. So I started networking. I started texting people, and before I got home, I had already had a line on that very first small marketing job that I took. So like I jumped right into marketing, but it's tough. I mean, you know, like I literally went out to this place to be out there for a year and came home 4 weeks later. You know, like so you feel like a failure. You feel like that like not only did you fail, it's like playing a video game, failing and never being able to play it again. Right? Like taking a class, failing, and like you can retake it. Nope, done. Right? Like my last memory, you know, like I had one good play where I went up, I had a monster dunk, came down, hurt my knee, and I knew it. Like I knew it. But I started networking. And I was able to land a job pretty shortly after I got back. But I was fortunate because I had been thinking through that and I had been training that and I had been going through.
So, kind of summing that up, maybe give a couple of words of advice to athletes that are transitioning out of sport now.
The first thing is don't be so hard on yourself. You are not as behind as you think you are. That was another thing that messed with my head is I'm like, man, I'm 26 and people my age have had 5 years of experience and I have nothing. So, and just like talk to people. People do want to help you. So ask other people for advice or direction. And more often than not, that will turn into a credible networking connection or them being like, literally had an athlete. This was 2 days ago at the time of this recording, right? So a few days ago, somebody from Elon put me in touch with this former athlete that is working somewhere. She's talking to me about like, yeah, like I like what I'm doing, but I need a change. I need a place where I can grow. I need a place where I can do this. I want to give my all. And she's basically saying every single thing that I look for in new hires. So I said, well, how about this? Why don't you interview with us? Right? Like, boom, just like that. She now has an interview. And that's literally because she asked somebody else put her in touch with me, and now that was able to work. Right? So don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I know I need something, but I don't know what it is. Or I want to do this, but I don't know how to get into it. And let other people work on your behalf because they do want to.
Yeah. No, that's some, great advice there. I think, you got to be open up to that. People are willing to help and just definitely tap into that for sure. So let's move forward and let's talk a little bit about, so you got in the social media space, just some various different positions, kind of ultimately culminating in starting your own company. So talk about that journey, starting Ace Creatives, and talk a little about what you're doing there today to help people.
Yeah, I love telling stories, whether it's humor, whether it's emotional, whether it's just like two people talking. I love telling stories. I was able to do that when I worked at Elon, when I worked at the various jobs, but I wanted to be able to create a company where I could do that all the time and do it in a way that I felt was most impactful. So I had started it basically as a side gig. Really, I was just creating a bunch of humor videos, like you kind of see influencers do. This is like pre all the major stuff. And then I had somebody ask me if I would create content for their company. So I was like, sure. So I did that for them, and then I did that for someone else, and then I did that for someone else, and they were like, well, hey, we can't pay contractors, we can only pay LLCs. So I was forced to get an LLC. So I thought of the name Ace Creatives because I wanted it to be creative. And Ace is a name that my brother calls me, and Ace Creatives, AC, it matches AC of my name. I incorporated because I had to in January of 2017. And then, worked at a bunch of other places and kept learning and kept networking and kept growing. And then, a lot of people were having pandemic babies. My pandemic baby was going to Ace full time. I was able to start with 2 clients. So it was me. And then I brought on one of my friends that I had been working with for that time. And it was just the 2 of us. And the first 2 weeks was great. He would come over at 8:30. We would work out together. We would start the day at 10 a.m. Then we got a third client. We have not had a day off since. So we really were able to build it, and it was through it was through organic networking of the people that we knew to build what Ace is today, which is over 30 employees and growing, creating content in multiple different avenues. We are a creative agency and a production company. I'm actually on set right now. I'm in our secondary studio, but we're shooting a commercial today in addition to social content that's there. But we've been able to grow this because of the good work that we've done and the people that we know. It has been the hardest job I have had in my entire life, like not even close, and the most rewarding. I would not trade this for anything. I mean, there's a few things I would trade it for, LeBron James's career, like something like that. But, building your own agency and building something that's mine has been extremely rewarding. How we've continued to.
That's great. And like you said, you're just dealing with all different types of verticals, so people just reach out and find you. Or what's the best places to find you?
Yeah, so we're pretty active on our Instagram, which is at hashtag Ace Creative. So that's spelling the word hashtag HASHTAG Ace Creative. But also on our LinkedIn, you'll see us. Our website is acecreatives.co. So, a lot of people, they see it. And usually what I say is we create what you need, even if you don't realize it yet. So when you go to our pages or our websites, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I did that. We need that, right? So any storytelling that happens on a screen is what we specialize in. And that's what we.
That's great. And so do you have like one killer social media tip for people out there?
One killer social media tip. That's a good one. No matter how long you've been in the industry, your audience knows what they want more than you do. So listen to your audience. A lot of times people be like, oh no, I know we need to create X. Look at what your audience is either connecting with, working through, whatever that is, and do it that way. But like your audience knows more than you do, so listen to your audience.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I think that's important. Anything is listening. Any type of, especially sales position, whatever it is, you need to definitely listen. So you can find us at alumnidirect.com. Our podcast is on our YouTube channel as well as across all the different podcast networks. Each week I talk about this. I just implore people to follow it, listen to it, watch it. There's so much great advice that like Adam gave today. I always call them the nuggets. He just gave you a great nugget right there for social media, but just tap into that. I mean, there's definitely life after sports athletes, and Adam's a prime example, and all of our other podcasts as well. And Adam, really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, for sure. My pleasure.